Thanks for taking a couple minutes to reflect on the heritage of our university, some of the accomplishments of last year, and to think a little bit about some of our emphases for the future. As I begin, I want to pause and thank everyone who helped contribute to Founders Day today. I get excited when I see the tent come up and people are out cooking, so I'm very much where I'm standing between you and lunch. It's what presidents do a lot. But everyone who contributed to this day, I see Miles Postman, the folks from GRGC, they do such a great job on the ice cream social. So I hope that you have a great time today. Thanks to everybody who contributed to make Founders Day a special event. For me, I've never worked at a place that really embraced its traditions like Ferris does. And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful quality of our institution. It makes us very unique and special. I also want to thank the people that helped me prepare for today. Sally Depew, who seems to be able to do anything with a presentation slide, and I don't know how she does it, but she does it very well. And Mark Sheehan, who helps me bring thoughts together, and Elaine, who edits and kind of makes certain that I show up at the right time at the right place. So with that, let's get started. This is where we begin. Woodbridge and Helen Ferris moved here in 1884. Wanted to establish a school for people who didn't have the opportunity to go to school. And you think about where their lives went. Mr. Ferris became two-time governor of the state of Michigan, was elected to the United States Senate, and died in 1928 serving in the Senate. Became a national figure. Helen Gillespie Ferris was really as an integral part of the development of Ferris as Woodbridge was. She was a master teacher. And I remember the words that Mr. Ferris said at her memorial service. He said, if there was a teacher of teachers at the Ferris Institute, it was Helen Gillespie Ferris. So together, they took our school, and we've seen that picture before. That's September 1st, 1884. And that's what we believe were the first 15 students, 10 men, 5 women. Not necessarily the most refined group of people that you've seen in terms of that. And what we began as, this was for people who didn't have the opportunity to get a high school education. And so in 18 months, they would receive the equivalent of a high school degree. They began in what's called the Vandersloot block downtown. It's where JCPenney's is today. And Mr. Ferris was an entrepreneur, so after he got started, he decided to have an evening. So he started an evening school. By January 1st, they'd moved to Maple in Michigan, about where the Fifth Third Bank is today. And that was their home until 9 years later, in January 1894, when they moved to about where the Pracken building is today, where they moved to this campus. And when they did this, my God, it must have seemed like they moved miles out of town, because if you look at the pictures from that time, there wasn't a lot near here. But that was the school that they built. And they built it with 2 ideas. They built it with the idea that they were going to give the opportunity to education for students for people who didn't have that education. And that they were going to find a way, in the manner of Pestalozzi, that they were going to combine theory and practice. And for me, I think it's extraordinary that we celebrate our founders today, but I think it's even more remarkable that we still embrace their ideals. And those are ideals we think about for our university. So if Helen and Woodbridge were here, I'd hope they'd be proud at the success we had last year as an institution, because there were many, many successes for our institution. We begin with the Higher Learning Commission and their review of our university. Many, many people worked on the HLC. The hours of preparation, study, and review that went into preparing this report, and the people who worked on this so very, very hard, what a remarkable achievement. And for us to receive full tenure accreditation, without any follow-up visits, without any reports, first time in our history. And I just wrote down some of the things that they talked about, that they thought were extraordinary. The way that we embraced and were committed to our mission. The way that we respected and understood our history. The support that we did for diversity, something I think we've worked on hard. Our interest in a global perspective. The way that we worked collaboratively. And then they talked about the strength of our curriculum, the strength of our finances, the quality of our facilities, and then this is one I really like, the relevance of our approach to learning. I don't think I've ever seen that in an accreditation report, and that has to make you feel really good about a place that, when they talk about the relevance of the approach to learning. I thought that was just remarkable. And then also the wonderful library we have and the support that we provide for students. All remarkable things. Many people have been involved with the global initiative started by our faculty with the idea that we wanted to give our students the opportunity to be successful in the global marketplace. That was the intent of it. And we were looking for ways to provide opportunities for our students, for our faculty and our staff to have global experiences both on campus and beyond. We're looking for ways to embed that in our curriculum and our programs. And it's been, to my intent, wildly successful. And you can see the ways that it's changed our university. And one of the things that I'm noticing is the incredible growth in our international students. 2 years ago, there was like 179 international students. Last year, about 230, 240, and this year, there's over 350. They really doubled the number of international students on our campus in 2 years. And I think this is a remarkable achievement to the folks who are going out and recruiting these students, helping them feel at home, helping them be successful. Because for the students who come here, we provide them an extraordinary education. But for everyone who studies or works here, they also change our university in what I think is a very positive way where we can develop an understanding of others. We've worked quite hard on diversity, and we've especially been focusing on the significant growth in Hispanic students. And to have a 14.6% increase in our Hispanic students last year, absolutely remarkable. The fastest growing part of our population. We're finding a way to embed and engage them in our university. And just this summer, our provost, Fritz Erickson, announced our Center for Latino Studies. And I'm very excited about the work that Tony Baker and Jessica Cruz are leading for us in terms of helping advance our efforts there. One of the things we've learned about energy conservation is that we have the expertise here on our campus to really address energy conservation. And the people here, especially the folks in our physical plant, have made it a major part of their responsibility to work on energy conservation. It's things like different faucets and different sprinkler heads, shower heads in our residence halls, different light bulbs in our rooms, different thermostats. But their efforts saved over $1 million. And what that means is for every student at Ferris, we didn't raise their tuition by 1% because of the efforts of the people who worked on energy conservation. It saved us a % of tuition, and that's a % of tuition increase that will be saved forever. It's a remarkable achievement, and we're going to do more. I hope that you've signed up for the wellness plan from Asset Health. If you haven't, I think there's still an opportunity to get engaged with it. I've tried to encourage Patsy to maybe put some of my activities in there so I can qualify for this too. But I think that we've had over 500 people sign up. It's something we've talked about, and it's a way that I think each of us can benefit, something that is for our long-term health. And so I'm very grateful for the people involved with this. And I really encourage you, if you have any interest at all, please take advantage of this. There's some very good resources here, and it's something that I think can change our campus in a major way. I don't know how many trips we made down to Wayne County Community College to try to partner with them and have classes down there. In fact, one of the things I told Don Green, and I think Fritz Erickson heard this from me, was I wasn't going to Wayne again until we were going to sign an agreement. And we have one. We're now offering classes at Wayne County Community College, which means that the Ferris footprint is right there in the largest community college district in our state, a very important expansion for us. And then last year, record enrollment, 14,560. So one of the questions people ask me is, so where's enrollment for this fall? Now, you understand we don't really say until tonight, so anything that I suggest now isn't official, but the thing that I'm going to be very, very excited about is we've talked for years and years and years about having more than 10,000 students in Big Rapids, and we are going to have more than 10,000 students in Big Rapids, and that's an extraordinary achievement for that. So this campus has grown. There'll be over 10,000 students here. Whether we'll set a record or not, that I'm not so certain of. I do know this also, that our student credit hours are up again, and that's, at the end of the day, that's a very important part for me because that's the part that really balances our budget. So I think what students are showing is that they appreciate and like Ferris State, that we're their first choice as an institution. Oh, did we talk about hockey? What an amazing year. If you had an opportunity to catch any part of our hockey team last year, it was really, I have to be careful I say this because the hockey people want to do this every year, but it was just a magical season. Winning the CCHA, having the top scholar athlete in the CCHA, something I mentioned in my legislative testimony since President of Michigan State were somewhere in the room. And then to win the Midwest Regional, to go to Tampa, to have the experience that we had there. And then I was sitting at a press conference with Bob Daniels, and he said, you need to know that this group of student athletes had a 3.41 GPA fall semester. So one of the reasons they won is they were smart. And 8 seniors, 8 graduates from Ferris State University, and Coach of the Year too. So pretty amazing thing. And we appreciate all our athletic teams, but this was a special experience for us all. A world-class university deserves world-class facilities, and we've done some work on facilities this year. Perhaps you've had a chance to see our new pharmacy facilities at 25 Michigan. It's right in the middle of the Medical Mile in Grand Rapids, and what we do with that is we pull together all of our third-year pharmacy students. Before, about 2/3 of them were in Grand Rapids, and another third were in Kalamazoo. Now, I see Steve Durst in the audience, and Steve always wants me to quickly add that we're still placing interns in Kalamazoo, that we haven't left the city, and that's true. But now all of our third-year students are here, and if you think about this, if you go to the left, that's the Michigan State Medical School. If you go to the right, that's headed towards the Lemon-Holton Cancer Pavilion. That bridge that goes across the street, that goes right into Van Andel Institute, into Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, and all those Spectrum facilities, over $2 billion of development in that part of Grand Rapids. The CEO of Spectrum told me that they had built 1 million square feet for their facilities on that hill. And to have our pharmacist right in the middle of that, and in a beautiful facility, that happens to be the student lounge. And I never saw a student facility like that when I was going to college. It's pretty amazing. And the best part of all is through a lot of hard work, the state contributed $6.6 million of the cost. And by purchasing this facility rather than leasing it, we'll save $13 million over the next 20 years. And the Jim Crow Museum, if you haven't been to the new Jim Crow Museum, please go. Go when you have some time to just look through it and study it. It is truly a remarkable facility. And perhaps you've been up in the little room that we had over in the Star Building, that 9x12 room where everything was pushed together. And that was fine, but this is really a dream that has become a reality. It happened because of the perseverance and the tenacity of David Pilgrim. It happened because of our friends at the DTE Energy Foundation. And this is a resource to be able to tell the story of racial inequality in our country, to talk about the man's inhumanity to man, and to create tolerance and understanding and dialogue. And it's just a remarkable thing. And David's not here today. He's down at Southwest Michigan College doing a diversity workshop for them. And when we talked about this picture, he didn't think it was his best side, but he said, go ahead and show it, because that group that's there, they're from Australia. And they're here because they want to create a museum like that in Australia. So that's the type of resource that we've set up for our faculty, for our staff, and our students to be able to see how this can make a difference for our campus. The final one is the Federal Building. Built in 1909 to 1911. It was the United States Post Office and courthouse up until they built the new courthouse, and then after a couple years it became the Grand Rapids Art Museum. And when the Grand Rapids Art Museum moved to their new facilities, the good news was that we could have this for $1. The bad news was it was falling apart. And This is, more than anything, a wonderful example of a public-private partnership, because we couldn't have pulled this off without our public-private partners. And the story of this deal is our private partners are Chrisman Development, and because we used a private developer, they could qualify for tax credits. And then our partners helped us go, and we received 3 different tax credits on this, $10 million in support from the state for this. And so during the first 7 years of the building, we lease it from Chrisman, and Chrisman burns off the tax credits, and then at 7 years, it'll be ours. And the goal all along was to turn this out in a shape where Kendall College of Art and Design could afford the bonds on this when we were done. And you know, there was a point where the architects told me this was a $31 million project. We actually brought it in for 22, but the out costs to Kendall, when we finish the fundraising on this, will be around $4 to $5 million. And this has been a great opportunity to build contacts, fundraising support in the Grand Rapids community. We've raised over $2.5 million, and we'll raise more before December. I'm going to digress a bit. I don't know how many people have been through this building, but I thought I'd just show you some of the before and afters, because it's kind of fun. I may never have the opportunity to do it again. So if you'll just humor me for a moment, we'll do that. This is what it looked like inside. This is the 4th floor. This is on the west side. This is now a computer room, but the water damage in this was such the water came down and it actually ate out the walls in the building and the ceilings in the building. And it's because it had a copper roof. They put tar on the roof, and the roof just leaked like a sieve. This is a 3rd floor judge's chamber. Hadn't been used since the early 70s. That was what it looked like. This is the mechanical room down the lower level. All the mechanical systems had to be replaced. And this is what the lower floor looked like. The decision was that they were going to take all the concrete out of this particular area because this is going to be a ceramics facility. What I don't think they understood when they started on it is there were 16 inches of concrete there. And you know, for the first 2 months I walked in this building, every time I was in there was a jackhammer. They had to carry it all out. They took 1 million pounds of concrete out of this facility. But this is what it looks like today. Is that amazing? And that's where ceramics is going to be taught at Kendall. This is my first experience with the federal building. This is an inside corner on the southwest 4th floor of the building. And that piece of plastic was leading the water that came through the roof down to a barrel. The barrel was almost full. That's how badly the roof leaked. If the building hadn't been built so solidly, it wouldn't still be extant. This is what that room looks like today. Is that amazing? Extraordinary, extraordinary project. And with this, what Kendall College of Art and Design will do with this is they're going to have a ceramics program that they've never had to this extent. They're going to have a sculpture program. All the galleries that were there for the Grand Rapids Art Museum remain. Those 2 beautiful courtrooms on the 2nd floor will be used for lecture space. They have a developing program in fashion technology to be in this building. And then the 4th floor has a gift from the Wege Foundation. It'll be the Wege Center for Sustainable Design. I learned something in this process. I thought that we would develop a degree in sustainable design. And what I discovered is that nobody wanted their degree to be the degree in unsustainable design. So we made it the Center for Sustainable Design, so all the degrees can benefit from that. And you know, here's the story that I want told on this. This is the gallery. This is the first time we opened the building. This is the Kendall Student Art Show. And I think this really shows you what this facility is going to be about. And if you go to Art Prize, begins on September 14th, is the opening ceremonies. This is a venue for Art Prize. They're already setting up in there, and it's a major venue. And when you think back to the first Art Prize, the winning work on water was in there. So maybe we'll have another winner in the building this year. The story of Ferris is a story of challenges. And I think back to 1928 when Mr. Ferris passed away, and maybe think 14 months later when Garrett Massling passed away. So the founder, his handpicked successor, both passed away in less than a year and a half time. And then what happened in 1929? The Great Depression hit. Very, very challenging times for our university. And you know, if you know a little bit about Ferris, this is maybe February 22nd, 1950. the day after the Great Fire when Old Main burned completely to the ground. And President Brophy at that time saved our school. This is the blackboard that he drug out in front of the alumni building. And what he put on it, Ferris Institute will go on. And his leadership was such that he didn't stop to say, well, let's think about whether we should have a university or not. He just said, we're going to move forward. Because he did that, we have an institution today. And people, if you talk to people who are alive then, classes met everywhere, in churches. They tossed all the students out of the Quonset huts. Any place they could find, they held a class. But they kept going. And under President Spadoff, we had the largest growth spurt in terms of building on our campus ever. Well, when you think about what this is, it's challenges and solutions. And we have challenges today, and the biggest challenge we face is one that threatens our students and it threatens our institution, and it's student debt. You've probably seen this slide before, so I'm not going to take much time to explain it, but what it says is a year ago, the average debt of a student who graduated with a bachelor's degree from Ferris State University was $26,000. Over the last 4 years, that debt has increased by 66%, and if it continues at that rate, by 2020, it's estimated that the average student debt for someone graduating with a bachelor's degree will be $80,000. And I think you can easily agree with me that that is not an acceptable outcome. And if you begin to actually break that out, that's the actual breakdown of what the debt was of the students in that cohort. And if you look from $40,000 over, that represents 60% of the graduates. So 60% of the graduates had debt of $40,000 or more. And there's no secret why students have debt, and the reasons are pretty obvious. I'm going to work through them with you. The first piece is we've just lived through a historic disinvestment in public higher education. If you look back to 2001, the state provided $55.5 million of our budget. Today, the state provides $41.3 million of our budget. That $2.9 million is the increase we received from the state this year, but those are one-time dollars. There aren't base dollars. Now, if you track the red line to the $74.3 million, if the state had only increased that $55 million by the rate of inflation, if they just increased it by the rate of inflation, that would be the support for our institution today. And then we've been the fastest growing public university for quite a while in Michigan. If they'd actually continued the funding at that level, adjusted it by inflation for every student, today our support would be $99.7 million instead of $41.3. Then the second piece, I'm not sure people are as aware of, but in 2009, despite our best efforts, the state cut 66% of the financial support for students in Michigan, from $235 million to $84 million. Why did they do this? It was because of the economic stimulus package, and they couldn't cut the universities. So when they couldn't cut the universities to balance the state budget, they cut our students. 1 year, $235 to $84 million. Now, what the red line is, and that's a story that I think, unless you've heard me talk about this before, you don't know that story. That's the actual state dollars that are going into that. Today, of the $100 million that goes to students across the state, if you think about that, all the college students in our state, only $100 million. It's a pittance. But of that $100 million, only $1 million of it is state funds. The other $99 million are federal funds. They're pass-through funds. They're temporary assistance to needy families. And when you think about that, you say, how does that fit? Well, the reason the state does that is because they can show the match through the money that they give us, and it's one of the few areas where they can develop the match. But the logic in applying those funds to this purpose is that college helps prevent teenage pregnancies. And that's the logic. It pulls that together. The third part is really about about the economic climate in our state. And it's easy to stand up and make comments about the legislature, but the reality is they had to make terribly difficult judgments. You think about it. The auto industry imploded. Did you ever imagine in your lifetime that you would see General Motors go bankrupt? Could you have imagined such a thing? I mean, we were at a point where we had nearly 25% unemployment in Michigan. 1 out of 4. And those are people who are out of work, seeking work, and not people who are underemployed. Think about that. Those were horrific decisions that people had to make. But we see that same impact in our students. 2007, 3,300 Pell Grant recipients. About 27% of the students enrolled at Ferris. 2011, 6,300 students, that's 44% of our students at Ferris, qualified for a Pell Grant. This year, I'm told, that number will be over 50%. So when you think about it, state cuts, reduction in financial aid, and then the increased poverty of our students. Those are three pretty powerful influences on what's happening here. And we have an opportunity here. You know, it's just like when President Brophy got out of his office, picked up the blackboard, wrote on it that Ferris State will go on. We have to seize this issue. We have to address this. We must address this issue to help our students. We cannot stand by and not address this issue. It is that critical. And we are. This is what we did last year. My guess is you've been to at least one open forum and you've heard us talk about this. And we identified this as a major campus focus. And in those forums, we always stopped and we solicited your ideas and we collected your ideas. And candidly, I didn't take the time to count how many ideas and suggestions we have. So I put it was 1,000, but I think it's a couple thousand. I just didn't think it was worth the effort to do. And then we discussed it and we reviewed it. And then this summer, we took those ideas and we refined them into 115 statements around 4 broad themes that you can see there. And then over the summer, we took it to the Spark Committee, and then we took it to our Board of Trustees and we asked them to review them. So now we're ready for the next steps. Today I'm announcing a university-wide task force. It's going to be chaired by Leonard Johnson, Professor of Education, and the chair of the Spark Committee. And I've asked Leonard to chair this committee. There are 3 priorities, 3 charges. What are the broad priorities so we can move forward? Consider how we engage the entire university, and let's empower faculty leadership for this effort. And then he has assembled what I think is a very strong group of faculty and staff and administrators to work on this. Kathy Archer, Dan Burcham, Sarah Dew, Fritz Erickson, Doug Hainline, Gloria Lucchesa Barnett, David Marion, Christy Montz, Bill Potter, and Jim Rumpf. And I want to thank each of them publicly for being willing to commit their time to this effort. What I've asked them to do is to look at this and to bring back those recommendations to us by November. November 13th is the meeting of the Spark Committee so that we can move forward on this topic. They're going to be looking at 3 major areas of focus: controlling reducing costs, finances and financial literacy, and time to degree. And from my perspective, time to degree is the most important. All right. For the students who graduate with debt at Ferris, the last statistic was $35.5 million. Since I can do the math, we'll make that $36,000. That's the debt. Okay? And so if you say that it takes 6 years for a student to graduate from Ferris, it's possible to suggest that that's $6,000 in debt a year. Now, in reality, that's underestimating it because what our statistics show is the longer you're in school, you borrow more and more. But let's just say $6,000 for general pieces. Then let's say we have 14,000 students. I know we have 14,500, but again, that helps me do the math a little easier. So if you take 14,000 times 6,000, that number is $84 million. That's how much we could save 6 years of students if we could reduce their time to degree by 1 year. So now if we're going to equate that back to our budget, these students are going to graduate over a 6-year period. So let's divide it by 6 again. That number is 14 million. To get the same impact for our students as reducing 1 year in their time to degree, we would have to reduce our budget by $14 million. We can't cut our way to solve this problem, but we can change our behaviors. Thank you. You were terrific. So when we look at this, the tendency is going to say, well, this group costs too much, or that group costs too much, or this is something that costs too much. And my observation is that's always somebody who's not us, okay, with somebody other us. And certainly we can look at our costs, and we're going to look very hard at controlling the increase in our costs going forward. But the real savings, the real impact from our students is looking at time to degree. And success with time to degree, in my book, has a $14 million payoff and an $84 million payoff for our students. So if we can find a way to change our behaviors so our students graduate and graduate more quickly, we can make an incredible difference for them. And that is the real way to address student debt. And the reason for this is because tuition is only about 40% of the cost of a student going to school. Because if you think about your students, they depend upon their financial aid to live. It isn't just the tuition, it's the cost of living, it's everything that goes with that. So if we can reduce those costs for a year, we can cut those costs for them, and we can help them get a job so they're earning money rather than borrowing money. When we think about student debt, we don't often talk about what I think is the real tragedy of student debt, which are the students who don't graduate. These students, they have the means to repay. But the students who don't graduate, they don't even have the degree, they just have the debt. So the second area of emphasis I want to talk about is retention and graduation. This is first to second year retention. The blue is for 2-year programs. The red is 4-year programs, and the green is the university average. And if you look since 2001, some major improvement there, from 60% to 70%. Looks pretty good, right? But if you take the last couple years, I think we've leveled off. It looks to me like what we've done so far has encouraged us to kind of plateau at 70%. 70% is good. But 70% means that 30% of the students who started classes on Monday won't be back a year from now. I don't think we should accept that. I think we can do better than that. And we're going to need new ideas, we're going to need new approaches, and people are working on these. But we're going to have to do things differently to help these students succeed. When we look at graduation, not as much data to look at because we're talking about a 6-year time to graduation. This is one of the great stories of Ferris. Again, the same approach to the data, but look at 4-year programs in 2000. Those students, only 35% of those students graduated. But in 2010, 50% of those students graduated. That's among the top 15 improvements in graduation rates in the country. Now, my concern is, what happened in 2011? Now, there's always a little bit of difference in these numbers, and Dan will tell you that I've been begging for graduation data from last year, but I don't have it yet. So the question is that a blip, or is that a trend? And are you willing to suggest that we'll go back to where we were, or that we will beyond that? We already know this, that with our first to second year retention, we're not going to see much improvement from that because that's pretty much leveled out. So I would contend that we have additional work to do here to try to push our graduation rate up even higher so our students stay in school and they do graduate. The third area of emphasis I want to talk about is relationships. And if there's something I've seen in my 9 years at Ferris, it is a growing pride in our university. And there is much more appreciation, much more pride in what we do at Ferris, and the quality of our education, the difference we make with students. I see it and I sense it when I walk around our campus. And I also see it with our external relationships. We are perceived extremely positive across the state and in West Michigan. One of our vision pieces was to become the first choice for students who wanted to come to college, and it's happened. When you talk to students who come, their parents who come to look at our institution, they're here because they want to come here. That hasn't always been that way. But as you think about going forward, good internal relationships are absolutely essential to moving the university forward and working cooperatively on these things. But as we work at controlling costs, if we limit tuition, if the state doesn't provide much in terms of increase, that's going to create friction. It's going to make difficult discussions. Some of those are going on our campus right now. So we're going to have to work on those relationships. And as we think of going forward, look at each of these groups. And every time I show this slide to somebody, I get another group to add to it. So if you have another group, just add it. But our alumni, our donors, people in our local community, the community, Big Rapids is so good to our university, and that relationship is so strong. Our elected officials, the ability to work in business and industry, educators, state agencies who help our students who have challenges, of course the media. I think back to the federal building project in Grand Rapids, the Kendall College of Art and Design. We couldn't get that project done if we didn't have the partnership. We didn't have Crispin, couldn't have gotten it done. If our legislators, if the leaders in Grand Rapids hadn't worked with us with the state, we wouldn't have gotten the tax credits. If donors hadn't helped us, we wouldn't have gotten there. If the city and the county hadn't done the bonds, if the Downtown Development Association hadn't waived the taxes, none of that would have happened. That partnership made that building a reality. We need to find those same partnerships for the challenges that we face on our campus here and our efforts both here and beyond this campus. We have to find ways to partner with these people so that we can work together. But there's a characteristic of the federal building that I think made that such a powerful partnership. It was that there was something in that partnership for them also. There was a reason that they benefited from that partnership. A lot of times when we go look for partners, we're looking for people to help us. But we haven't thought so much about how we're going to help the folks that we're talking to. And it's not a partnership if it's only one way. But we need to work on relationships. And all of us will have to be a part of it, because when we step off this campus and when we're on this campus, we are Ferris State. We are Ferris State University. And finally, we need to work on development. We need to work on the resources that are coming in from our development efforts. The red bars, the annual giving, the blue bars are cash gifts. And if you look there, $5.5 million a year ago, the largest cash gifts in our history. A record year for us, absolutely exceptional. And we're going to continue to do extremely well. But if you look at the red bar, that's our annual fund. And that's $316,000. And that's not enough, because that's going to be the driver, the catalyst that grows the rest of it. If we don't begin with people on an annual basis, it's going to be very difficult to have them make a larger gift down the road. Now, the people at University Advancement Marketing are working very, very hard on this. They're looking for new approaches to this, and they've set as a goal that we're going to double this. But we're going to have to find a way to find more friends and to get them to help support our work at Ferris, because what they can do, they're not going to replace base dollars, but they give us the ability to put that sheen of excellence, that quality that we want to do something exceptional with our programs and our efforts, and they can help provide scholarships for our students. So these are the four ideas I've tried to share with you today. 4 things that I think are very important as we look at this year going forward. And if you think about them, they all grow out of a commitment to student success. And I think that's really at the core of what we do, the programs we provide our students and student success. So I look forward to dialoguing with you. I look forward to talking with you about these efforts. And I think back to Mr. and Mrs. Ferris, and when they came to to Big Rapids, and their idea was that they were going to create a school that made a difference for students, that made a difference in their lives. And I think that's what we do. We do it today, just like they did back then. So I want to thank you for the efforts that you do every day for Ferris. I look forward for working with you throughout the year, and I hope you enjoy Founders Day. Thanks so very much. Thank you.